there is already a problem with men thinking we want to give women a seat on the table. Meanwhile, this table does not belong to anybody. The Bible never said the man is the head of the woman. The Bible only said the husband is the head of the wife. Nobody gave men an inevitable leadership role in humanity. However, that role can be acquired based on responsibility. There are a lot of, young men out there that we must pray that they must not meet our girls because they are walking, talking time bomb. Right? They are just there because of some of those biases. I see a global masculine crisis. However, it gets more complicated in Africa.
Cross-dressing.
I think there's a fundamental problem with with people like that, right? You go to schools these days and talk to boys who's your role model. The kind of names they mention, you would then know that these guys are going mainstream.
Interesting conversation to have with a fine young man, Solomon Ayodele. Ayodele, the surname is a name dear to me. One of the closest people to me is an Ayodele as a personal first name, actually.
Wow.
It's such a fine pleasure having you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
The pleasure is mutual. You are a social innovator.
Yeah.
You are a tech analyst, business analyst. You are a project manager. There's a whole lot that you do.
Correct.
But even more profoundly, I would say for the last 7 years now,
correct,
you've been founder and CEO of Boys Quarters Africa.
Yeah.
What's that?
So interesting backstory. I would call myself an accidental founder. My goal wasn't to start any NGO because I've realized that in Africa we've bastardized the NGO space. And like you said, it is not my means of livelihood. So, I grew up with 4 brothers, with 5 siblings. My dad is a pastor. My late mom was a pastor. And despite the fact that my parents invested so much in us, spiritually, physically, emotionally, think about all the terrible things young men would do. We did them. Everything. Right. So when I left university, I started writing about boy child, masculinity, because I believe if you want to mess with any generation, mess with their men. Manhood is a critical part of, any part of the society. And I realized that because the world isn't paying attention to that year. So I started writing about it. I was visiting the Special Correctional Center for Boys at Oregun Ikeja. So it was at the point when they told me, see, you can't come back again as Solomon. You need to come as an organization. Hence, Boys Quarters Africa. So, and the idea around Boys Quarters is to say that we want to take boys to the back of the house, groom them, raise them, reform them, and bring them back to the main building for them to add value to the world and the society as a whole. So, so I call myself an accidental founder of an NGO.
Interesting. We've just talked a few seconds. I'm already seeing similarities between your childhood and mine.
Wow.
My mother had 4 boys.
Wow.
Yours, you were 5.
We're just few boys away from a football team.
Yes. So there are, in my house, I have 2 older brothers, 1 younger brother, and of course 1 sister who's directly after me. So we're essentially just boys, 4 boys, and my 1 sister. And my family is quite peculiar because all my brothers have only boys.
Wow.
I have 4. My eldest brother has 2. That's 6. Count with me. My immediate older brother has 3 boys.
Wow.
So if we do that, that's already 9.
9, yeah.
My sister has 2 boys and 2 girls. So that's 11 boys. School team, don't right? And my younger brother has 2 boys.
Whoa.
Yeah. So 15. My parents, if they were alive today, they will have 15 grandchildren. And of that number, a whopping 13 boys. In fact, there's a joke we crack in our family that we don't have any X chromosomes. They're all Y chromosomes and all. So you can understand why the very first time I heard you, I was like, I need to talk to this guy, like, because you made so much sense to me that I just felt we need to sit down and have a conversation. And it's such a fine opportunity to have this sit down with you.
My pleasure.
My first question was going to be whether there was a pivotal moment that sparked the whole Boys Quarters Africa thing, but of course you already gave me that hint. It started with your prison outreach and all of that, which you started as just Solomon.
An individual.
Got to a point where they were like, man, this thing better, it's got to be structured, so not some fine young guy coming to.
Correct.
So accidental founder. Accidental CEO. Tell me about your childhood, though. Were there things in your childhood that you struggled with, unknown ideas of masculinity and all of that? What shaped you into the guy you became?
And this is a very tough question, because this is almost like unearthing things I've possibly not taken our time to think about, talk more of sharing, right? I think my earliest memory is seeing my dad juggle multiple jobs, right? He relocated from the UK. And the issue was my mom couldn't get a visa. So my dad needed to come back to the UK come back from the UK to Nigeria to stay with her. And I mean, I was born February 1992. And my earliest memory was seeing my dad go from Ladipo to Shomolu, buying paper, running a printing press, running the fellowship. He hadn't started his church then. He was still serving with a pastor. And just seeing him do multiple things. I think it was at that time I told myself I needed to make something out of my life, because I realized that as an average young man, if your father is not Otedola or Dangote, you only have God and your hard work, right? So I didn't really have any teenage years, and I'm very sincere. At the point when I left secondary school, I became my father's executive assistant. So I was accompanying him to Mushin to buy paper, to sort out. In fact, I got so involved in church that I could play different instruments, from keyboard to, and it wasn't because I wanted to do church or do religion, because I just felt I needed to make something out of my life, seeing the struggles my dad most importantly went through. And also to say that I also saw the challenge my parents went through in their marriage. I saw the struggle. I saw the genuine mistakes my dad made, looking back now, right? So I would say maybe 2 or 3 experiences shaped my growing up. The first one would be, I recall in 1999, we're going to live in Yanokpaja. So my dad had built a small apartment somewhere around the Drishaga at the back, close to Ogun State, right? We're going to move, and because we were 5, I had a younger brother who I'm 5 years older than. So when they brought the truck, the driver sat, my mom sat in the middle, lapped my younger brother, then my dad sat, and the 3 of us were outside. And the driver said, you people should get to the back of the truck, right? So we got into the back of the truck that afternoon and drove for like maybe an hour, 45 minutes. For boys then, it was, we're having fun. But because, I just grew up as a different kind of child. I knew something had to be different with our lives, right? There has to be different with our lives. And, that was the first experience. The second experience was, I recall that we're always traveling in quotes to Ikoyi then for vacation. So the richest person in my family was my dad's elder brother, who was the former MD of an insurance company. We usually get Christmas clothes from them every year. until we realized that the clothes we were getting were the used clothes from their kids. So this particular year, the kids didn't come back from the US, so we didn't have any Christmas clothes. And so we kept asking our dad, Daddy, Daddy Koya has not sent, and the man said, oh, maybe, because my dad knew that maybe they hadn't returned from the US. I think those two experiences, there were a lot of things people say about young boys. Oh, you did this, you did that. I never had that middle experience of flourishing around in my life. So the moment I was out of secondary school, I was already the peer of a comedian. I was running stuff for Kick Against Indiscipline. I was running MC. I was attending an event at the Rise Network. I was attending Speaker's Corner with Fela Durotoye. I was already writing drafts of book. I was ghostwriting. By 14, I was already making some money. Right, because I knew that without God and my hard work, I'm going to repeat. And my dad is an amazing man, so I find a lot of genuinely good people who are poor, not because they're not hardworking, right? I just figured there's a kind of velocity a plane needs to take off, and I needed that velocity, right? And I wouldn't say I've made it, but I'm grateful to God that those pivotal experiences sort of shaped my growing up.
It's amazing when you think about it. We look at our parents, we love them.
Yeah.
I mean, again, more things we have in common. I thought God blessed me with the most extraordinary dad. Not perfect, but a man who loved God and loved people and did his best. He didn't have wealth to bequeath to me or to any of my siblings, but the things he gave us, money cannot buy.
Correct.
But we also saw him struggle, like you. And there were mistakes he made in his life that, as a kid growing up, you just told yourself, I don't want to make these mistakes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel I've already made some of them already.
I feel like I've made some mistakes. So let me tell you, my brother.
Yeah.
So I turned 33 in February. And I came in one of my mentees to the studio. I think he's just 26. And I tell him, go and get married. The older you get as a man, the more complicated your life gets. My dad is going to turn 73, 15th of this month. And my dad told me 3 years ago, he said, if he had his way, he would have given birth to us a long time ago, despite the fact that he got married a bit early, right? So, I'm in a relationship, I'm in a fruitful relationship, but the moment you hit your 30 as a young man, your life gets convoluted. So you have a great job, you have people looking up to you, you have a thriving non-for-profit, you have a blossoming career, you leave Asia today, you're in Europe, you're on the billboard, you're called for an event and all of that. And you're beginning to feel, I mean, yeah, I know I need a woman in my life, but at the end of the day, this woman thing. So I sort of feel like there were some things, my parents, some mistakes they made that, one way or the other, I'm beginning to make them. But of course, we have the chance to course correct.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I mean, I was 30 when I got married. I had my first kid before I turned 31.
Wow.
And I have a 20-year-old kid now.
Wow.
And I still think I left it late. Because I never wanted to, I was so determined to be married at 25 growing up. And I'm not sure where that came from. Both my parents thought it was idiotic to want to go and get married at 25. You've got your life. The only reason why I didn't marry somebody at 25 was not because I didn't have money. Well, I didn't have money, right? But that was not what was holding me back. It just at 25, I also thought, talking about how we look at our parents' mistakes and we want to correct them. I used to tell myself I wasn't going to marry anybody I've not been friends with for 5 years. So by my own self-imposed yardsticks, I had to have met somebody at 20 who would be there for me at 20. By the time I would be 25.
25.
But it didn't happen for me. So and by the time I met the girlfriend at the time, I was literally, 23? And then I went on again for another 7 years. I wanted to marry her sooner.
Ooh.
We didn't get parental consent. We struggled. We didn't even have parental consent, but she was 28, I was 30. I was like, scratch that, man. We're not going to these people have lived their lives. Do we go or not? And we got married at the time, even though I would have liked to be a father much earlier. My younger brother, on the other hand, became a father at about, 25 or so, 25 or 26. And when you look at it, I mean, when I sit down with my kids, I have these big boys, these young men who argue with me all the time. It's just fantastic when I look at it. There's something it does to you. And sometimes you look at them and you're like, did I really, And yet I wish it was sooner. So I agree with you. I kind of feel that the modern human came up with this idea that you had to accumulate and amass and be this and be that before you settle down. Now, I'm not compelling anybody to settle down. I tell my boys, when you marry, if you choose to marry, when you have kids, if you choose to marry. My wife and I are such that we don't want to pressure anybody to do anything. However, we can share experiences with you, make of it what you will.
Correct.
Remember, at the end of the day, whether you blame anybody for the path your life takes, you are the person who's going to live with it. So it just resonates with me. At the risk of jumping in and saying I agree with everything you say, because I'm waiting to quarrel with you if possible. I'm sitting here and wondering about the work you do with men. There are, new generation language we hear every time. Misogyny, this, and all of that. And you cover these things extensively.
Yeah.
Men exhibit these things to varying degrees. And somehow I kind of feel that we all have a measure of it. It's just down to your mindset.
Yeah.
And if you are conscious of it and if you actually mentally work to set it aside, because for most of us, we're a combination of good and evil.
Correct.
Isn't that?
Correct.
So what have you found? I'm building to the next question I want to ask you, which is the reception you are getting from people, especially from men. But what are you finding out about men that worries you, that you feel that these are things that society have got to take care of? And I know you're a data guy, so you might as well supply us with some of the data.
Absolutely. In the past, when I get to have this kind of conversation, I share external data, right? Some random data out there, and people are like, "Oh no, this is not United States of America. This is." In 2021, I ran a survey with Boy Scholars, where we engaged over 2,000 men, clearly 18 and above. A couple of things we wanted to find out. Number one was the first time they ever had any kind of sexual experience. And we realized that 99% of them got involved one way or the other in any kind of sexual experience before the age of 18. What it means is that they were either raped or abused before the age of 18. I packed that data aside, right? Then we asked questions around, as a man, as a married man in quotes, if you want to get intimate with your wife, right? And your wife is saying no, what would typically be your response? We realized that a large chunk, over 70-something% of them, claimed, my wife cannot tell me no, right? We're married, we're supposed to, and all of that. I see a global masculine crisis. However, it gets more complicated in Africa, right? The default anger, the default problems with men, with their inability to manage their emotions, a bulk of those issues stemming from some of their childhood experiences they have refused to accept and open up about. So there are lots of dead men who died at the age of 17 but got buried at the age of 77 because they were abused by a reverend father when they were 16 in a boarding house, but they never expressed it. And guess who they melt this anger at? Their wife, their sons, and the son, because it is what they see they become by default. They then begin to replicate or understand that the meaning of masculinity is being strong, being aggressive when daddy comes into a room. I mean, my dad is a cool guy. Shout out to the great guy, right? Growing up, my dad has a particular sound. It's Peugeot 504. Whenever we hear that sound, everybody in the living room, not because it was going to beat us up, but because we just felt, the emperor, the conqueror is here, and everybody disappears. And he comes and says, you guys, what have you been up with and all of that? But because there's an ingrained understanding of the father is here, there's a picture, right? So I feel like there is a major underreported crisis with childhood trauma with men, especially with their sexual experiences, which is now stemming into the way they act, the way they behave, the way they relate. That's one. Number two, there is an issue with acceptance, where a lot of men feel like whenever you want to talk to them about help, you're trying to emasculate me. I mean, in 2018, I was walked out of a studio of a national TV where I was talking about the sexual experience of boys, where I said, I hope you know boys, abuse is abuse irrespective of the gender. The man said, no, men enjoy sex, right? Men shouldn't be, you don't talk about sex and say a man was abused. Recently, an hotelier was caught abusing a young man. That was how, I got into Nigerian info to talk about it. The guy was saying, no, I'm not trying to use him for ritual. The only thing I did was to sleep with him. To show how much people don't even pay a lot of attention. So I see this stemming, and guess what, sir? There's a program I run every month called Conversation, where we bring men to just have conversation. We run a survey, and we've realized over and over again, I mean, this is a public podcast. I know this might go viral, but I'll say it. The first time I ever kissed a girl was at a vigil in church. I wasn't even 18 yet. An older girl, right? And this is the experience a lot of men have. And when it then begins to trickle into the way they think, the way they behave, it then becomes so traumatic. And when you're trying to offer them help, they then say, why are you trying to emasculate me? Why are you trying to help me? There's no problem with me. As a man, you need to be aggressive. As a man, you need to stand on your own space and all of that, right? So I feel like there's a general masculine crisis. And guess what, sir? It is even more terrible with the boys. Because you speak to boys today at the age of 14, they have multiple partners who they've started sleeping with. Boys in secondary school they've had sex 3, 4, 5 times. And, when you go to their class, tell them, when a man is trying to make, they will say, no, uncle, why are you trying to? A young boy at the age of 13 told me in a public school that he knows the different kind of condoms used. This is my work. This is what I've invested my last 7 years into, right? So when I think about the current crisis, I don't worry so much, because I feel like, in the next 30, 40 years, this generation of men would go meet the Lord. But these 13-year-olds, these 14-year-olds, and beyond the crisis around their mind, we now have a lot of immature young men. So you tell a 14-year-old boy to stand beside a 14-year-old girl. A 14-year-old girl is already thinking family, thinking structures, thinking system, thinking responsibility. But a 14-year-old boy is thinking, how do I check the girl? How do I, so I don't get so much into the crux of the conversation. This is what I see from the work I do with men.
There's a lot to unpack in what you just said. It's like my head is just firing in every corner. But let me just try and unpack a little bit. Your personal experiences.
Yeah.
And we are all a product of our experiences. Correct. Too. I mean, you got kissed at 18. Your own better now. But I was 14. And again, fortunately, it was just a girl, give and take, a year older, and a secondary schoolmate. I didn't even know what kissing was, except what I saw on television. But before that, there had been attempts by older girls to try and corner you in one,
Yeah.
from play and all of that. But because of the kind of mentoring we had, so I always ran away.
Correct.
The girl would try to corner you, try
Yeah.
to drag you, pull you in, and you're like, hey, stop it, and then you run. Because my father used to say run. So I used to run. At a point, I got used to running, but there was this girl that I liked, and stuff happened, and then I used to think kissing was something you did when your lips touched each other, and I didn't understand what this girl. I thought she was trying to suffocate me. Actually trying to plunge herself into my mouth. I was pretty young at that time. How old were you when you had sex for the first time?
Interestingly, I've never had sex. So the first experience I had was just kissing in church with an older, maybe she was 7, 8 years older. Right. Was a vigil where the way you go to church and waiting for the service to start by 12 a.m. Just the way kids and everybody would and we're all sleeping, and I saw her move close to me. I mean, an innocent young man, the pastor's kid, the drummer in church, the keyboardist in church, liked by everybody and all of that. She moved close to me, and the next thing I experienced was her lips on mine, right? I didn't know what it was until maybe 2-3 years after, right? Because after then, she relocated, left the country, but I didn't know what had happened to me. At that point, it was just a case of, children doing children stuff, right? Now thinking about it, I can imagine what boys now experience, right? Because for kids of these days, they don't want to stop there. They don't want to stop at just the kissing thing. I'm just so privileged by God's grace, whatever it is, to say it just ended at that point, because it could have been something more.
Yeah.
And what I've also realized is that the moment this experience starts, the way men or those young men then see women, they see them as objects. Yeah. It then becomes a case of, I've tasted the apple. What's more?
Yeah.
Let me do more. Let me experience more. And it becomes something they are not able to manage.
It's tough, isn't it?
It is.
At this age, you are still unmarried. And you are in your 30s, 33?
Yeah, 33. Yeah.
Most people think it's not possible. There are no 33-year-old young men out there who've not had sex. And because again, the system makes you feel that everybody's doing it. Even the younger kids, 13-year-olds think if they're not having sex, they think that they're the only ones. And sometimes, when they hear things like this, it's encouraging that, you can do this, I was 23 when I had my first experience, and I wasn't a willing participant. I was literally lured into it. Wow. So even though I was a full-grown adult, I felt used, if I'm not going to call it abuse, but I still felt used, because this was with somebody who knew me very well, who had known me for years, and she was deliberate about it. And when I even tried to stop when it was a bit too late, she just laughed and said, just continue. You're not a virgin anymore, something like that. So it can be, and which was something else that I also picked from your conversation. As a parent, we tend to assume that the boys are going to be okay. Fathers, I don't have a daughter. I have 4 boys. But I knew if I had a daughter, I'll be more paranoid about her than the boys. And that is the real danger. You think the boys are okay. You can go wherever, go and stay anywhere. Whatever abuse they're going through, you have no clue. And if you do not already have a very open talking relationship with them, they're never going to tell you anything anyway. So I'm looking at this and I'm wondering, from your experience, what should parents be taken away, especially parents of boys who feel, oh, my girl, God, don't let my daughter disgrace me. But I see men who say, boys, what's the worst that can happen? They will impregnate. It's another man's daughter, they will impregnate. Some fathers just feel like that, pata pata, he would,
Impregnate a girl.
and all of that. And you see some instances where the kid impregnates somebody as a parent who are telling him, how are you sure it's you? And they are the ones, they call the young girl and they even try to get her to abort, and stuff like this. What does your experience show?
So there are different areas to this conversation. There is the cultural part of it, there's a religious part of it, and there's the family part of it. Over the years, I've heard the boys will be boys thing. I used to think it was just a general mantra, the way people just say stuff. But boys will not be boys. Boys will become what they are taught and raised to become. And I worry for our future. And here's my worry. We, as humans, we tend to, when there is a problem, we tend to pay hyper attention so much more that it then becomes loop-sided. Because of the biases against women and girls, we have paid so much attention on raising great, amazing women, amazing girls. So much more that we then have a crop of young boys who are not just struggling, whose future is at a state where if there isn't any intervention, there may be crisis. So let me start from the religious point of view, sir. Churches today, they run 52 women meetings, 52 weeks in the year. When it is time for International Men's Day in November, we run one event for men. Do you know what they do at those events? Instead of allowing these men express themselves and talk about the bodies they've been carrying, we then talk at them and say, so Femi, you need to be a man, you need to be responsible, you need to, be a present husband, you need to. I'm sorry to say we waste our time because they are not listening. They are not listening. But in the other way, when you have women meetings, you tell the women, express yourself, say your mind, pour it out, be vulnerable. So there is already a crisis with even men being able to properly raise boys. Because there is anger, there is pain pent up everywhere in their minds. So in churches, we're not getting the right kind of enabling environment for men to be able to properly raise. And I'm not sorry to say, to raise real boys, we need real men in their lives. Shout out to amazing single mothers. For example, I'm building a platform today called My Guy, where we'll be able to connect young boys to mentors across the world. So if you're a single mother, you can come on the platform, get your son to talk to somebody. But a boy needs a man in his life to grow up to become a better man. A sheep cannot raise a goat. And I'm not saying this is not about gender. I'm not saying a woman cannot raise an amazing son. But I'm saying there is something a man does in raising another man, right? So this is the religious part of it. The cultural part of it is there is already a problem with men thinking we want to give women a seat on the table. Meanwhile, this table does not belong to anybody. So for a man to raise another child who is a boy, there is already a problem in the mind of that man. So you wouldn't see men talking to young boys and sharing some things. You'll be wondering, Oga, what exactly are you trying to say? Right? So they say, so as a man, you're talking to a boy as a man. Don't let them shove you aside. A girl cannot be leading in your class. So your son brings his homework, his reports back home after maybe a semester or a term. And you say, oh, good. Second position. Who was the first position? And you say, oh, Cynthia. And you're like, why should Cynthia be top of your class? Why should Cynthia, You
let a girl beat you.
Let a girl beat you. And there's an assumption that leadership is based on the masculine genital in between your legs. Right? So that is also a cultural thing we need to fix. Right? And beyond that, let's come to the family. Boys will not be boys. There is a problem with the boys we then have today. I hope you know, sir, that the things a 13-year-old boy knows, you possibly don't know half of it or 40% of it. The exposure to pornography. And the world is going to get complicated in the world we see now will be totally different with the advent of AI. So even the rape girl because I do tech, all of the things we're trying to do now to say, I don't want my son to watch a certain kind of something on YouTube. All of those things, there will be democratization of your responsibility. So for you to be able to get solid men in the coming days, it will require more. So what am I trying to say? We need to come back to the days when it takes a village to raise a child. So gone are the days when you tell your child, as a boy, your sister should go to the kitchen to go and play. You go to the field. Boy should not be in the kitchen. As a boy, tell your sister to come and lay the bed. As a man, you shouldn't be found doing this kind of, go and play games. We need to go back to the basis where we're taught how to domesticate boys again. Because in the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to have a crop of well-spoken, irresponsible men. Not because they are not rich. And you see, the problem is, my postulation, we're going to have richer women in the coming days than men. What then happens is that if a 23-year-old boy or 25-year-old man wants to get married to a 25-year-old girl, and she's richer than you are, she's well-traveled, she's well-spoken, she's from a humble background like you, but got a job, raised herself, the question would then be, what else can you bring to the table? A time will come when men will struggle to have anything to bring to the table. Because
other than their genitalia.
I wasn't going to say that, but thank God it's coming from you. Because little things like leadership, responsibility, accountability, initiative, passion, all of those things are things that are now missing in young boys that you would find in girls. So you go to schools today. In fact, I was telling the teacher, I said, we need to scrap this nonsense where there's head boy and head girl. If you want to have the leader in the school, don't make boys believe that the head boy is over the head girl. They are both leaders. In fact, let there be a time. I personally believe the reason why Nigeria is still where we are, or Africa as a whole, is because we've not given women a chance to lead, right? So things like conversation around leadership for boys are things we need to come back to our families to have conversations about. To say, sit boys down and let them know you need to wash your plates, lay your bed, learn how to prostrate to greet. Guess what, sir? If I had a sister, I'm sure they must have taught my sister how to kneel down to greet a guest. I mean, my dad is from Ekiti, well-versed and well-traveled. And nobody ever taught me prostrate to greet anybody. I just grew up known as a Yoruba man. But every average young African girl today, whenever I get second, they will say, is that how to greet? But for a boy, when you say, good morning, sir, they would even say, my friend, shake me as a man. Yeah. So these are some of the ingrained problems we need to start fixing. Just to wrap up and answer to this question, sir, this issue requires immediate intervention. And I'm going to quickly chip in this. I have a problem with those who are now commercializing the transformation of masculinity in Africa. I'm not saying you shouldn't start your coaching program, but I'm saying this is supposed to be a movement. It should be a calling. If I leave banking tomorrow, I'm going to do this job as my entire life. My dream life is to say at some point, 7-8 years, I want to leave banking to face this, because we need people who can sit down with boys, who can invest in them, who can take out time to understand them, who can help them squeeze out those pent-up anger. Sir, the way you are today, you can still manage your anger. Those boys, if they rage at you, secondary school boys, you tell them sit down, they tell you, why, uncle? They rage at you, and these are boys that will get married in 15 years, get married to the same girls we're spending millions of US dollars on through different girls empowerment programs. So, I mean, I've said a lot about this.
It's a lot, but it's very useful. It's a very useful lot. An emotionally immature male who has no control over their emotions and therefore their anger, who do not know how to accept no for an answer, who do not understand how to cope, who does not understand how to cope
correct
when they fail, can be a danger to society.
Absolutely.
Serious danger.
Absolutely.
And so if you have an emotionally immature woman, to some extent, she's limited in how she can rage.
Correct.
She may rage with her mouth. And she's probably going to scratch you.
Yeah.
But she does not have the physical might to do tremendous damage unless she has access to weapons. And if the weapon is not a gun, a gun is a great equalizer.
Correct.
Where you don't, even if a lady handled a knife, it's not the same way bulky, muscular man who is angry and has no control will handle the knife. That's a different threat altogether. And a very angry woman could come at you with a knife, and you can be confident that at worst you'll get a scratch.
Yeah.
You'll be able to, you understand? But when it's a guy who then grows up like that, it's no longer a boy. It's now manly. It's muscular. And they all want to spend time in the gym now. They want to build muscles and build all of that. Nobody's caring about building mental muscles.
Correct.
It's just physical muscles. That can be a serious threat.
It is. So we ran a program in 2022 called Project Sabi. We got a partnership with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Netherlands. We were supposed to train 1,000 men across Lagos, Enugu, and Abuja. My brother, my eyes saw shaggy. With men, with this anger thing. So I was at the car park in Enugu. And we're running this campaign, we got security just so, so it was a car park outreach with especially the men, because we realized that issues around violence were perpetrated in those kind of informal spaces. So we needed to just reach out to them. So I was in Enugu, flew from Lagos, lockdown on Monday, Tuesday, I was already at the car park. And I started talking about, your wife, if you won't sleep with your wife and your wife talks, say, no touch me. You know, get rights to touch. You need to see the way this guy charged at me. Charged at me. Oh, God, you won't spoil my house. You won't spoil my family. And I'm like, bro, hold on. What did I say exactly? I said, how you go talk, say, make my wife. They say no. My wife no get rights to say. This is real life data-based stories of men like this. And you see, a man that cannot take no for an answer will eventually rape another woman. So
it's inevitable.
If you're asking a woman out and the woman is saying no, now you're like, as a man, I'm supposed to be. Let me tell you something, sir. I hope we know, for those who are believers of the Bible never said the man is the head of the woman. The Bible only said the husband is the head of the wife. Nobody gave men an inevitable leadership role in humanity. However, that role can be acquired based on responsibility. So men want this power by default. So you see an irresponsible man who is not providing for his family, beats up the wife, comes back home drunk, and still says, why are you not setting the table for me? Why are you not kneeling down to feed me? Some of those things, right? So I think this anger issue is something, right? And the reason why I talk this passionately about boys' quarters, about men and boys, is because I really want men to understand that when I talk about this, it is coming from, it's not a means of livelihood for me. It is, for me, it's like a ministry. I'll tell you this. I was in the lorry in 2018 or 2017, and the young boy walked up to me and said, "Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you, blah, blah, blah. Can I talk to you?" "Yes, talk to me." And he said, long and short of the story, he's been abused by his teacher for like 2 years and all of that. And he said, "Oh, yes, that this is the first time he's ever hearing of this and all of that." We're able to report the case. They took it up and whatnot. It was that year I realized that if I die, I'm going to die a fulfilled man. Because of the number of lives that I'm seeing transit. Some of the boys I spoke to 5 years ago, 6 years ago, some of them are in the university, doing so well for them. So I just thought to mention that.
It's crazy, isn't it? There's this thought that is going on in my head now that I want to ask you about to try and build on some of these things that you are saying. So there is a healthy balance to be drawn between raising men who are responsible, but who also are helped to understand what proper, healthy masculinity is about. I like what you said about the Bible. The Bible is pretty clear when it comes to women, right from the Mosaic law down to the Christian law. A woman starts out as any other child, being under the authority of her father. And then when she gets married, she comes under the authority of her husband. There are no in-betweens. No in-betweens. Boyfriend is not included. Fiance, it doesn't say anything. So you are married, you know, and all of that. But again, even in some people translate that to mean that the man then has control. Everything he says must be law and all of that. There was one little thing that Jesus also said that people do not pay attention to when describing the headship that the man wields over his wife. He compared it to the same headship between the Christ and the congregation. The question is, what kind of headship was it? It was one of self-sacrifice. So self-sacrificing, he was willing to give his life for it. So if you just put that in context, and in today's world, if you have that kind of mindset, you are seen as a weak man.
Absolutely.
Woman rapper, what you fun left for yes, whatever it is that they say. And young men juggle this. Even the better ones, even the ones who are striving, they have to juggle this kind of thing. If you are out in the public and your wife is carrying too many, you help her with a handbag, other men might begin to look at you like, guy, what are you doing? Along those lines, I do not know how there's something called quiet misogyny, which you have talked about. And a lot of people do not pay attention. Could you please address that, the forms of the silent ones that people may not know? Because again, people need to also learn that sometimes you exhibit these traits. Maybe at least to a degree, not actively. But it's there nonetheless.
The truth is, we all carry these biases. It's somewhere ingrained at the back of our heads. If you're an African, my place of primary assignment is Africa. If you're an African man, we all carry it. We all carry this bias at the back of our mind somewhere.
We say it's masculine ego.
Yeah, we say that. And I'll start with my experience in the corporate world. Last year, August made it 10 years I've been in the banking industry. And I see the nuances. I see the way women are being addressed. I see the way women are seen in meetings. I see the way people talk to women. I see the way people respect other men on a certain level. And when it's time to address women at the same level, there's a bit of difference. And I see the way they undo women who will not accept this subtle disrespect. So, I mean, the long and short answer is there is always a very healthy balance to these things. And I think the balance is number one, knowing that we all carry all of these biases. For example, before my late mom passed in October 2022, I sort of felt like there were some people who became a pastor in my dad's church who shouldn't become a pastor before my mom was ordained a pastor. Think about intellectual capacity. Think about elocution skills. Think about even anointing in quotes based on the display of it. But because there's a certain kind of structure in place at the back of our mind, it may not be intentional, right? And this is what I call, unintentional consequences of some of our actions, right? So I would say accepting that we all have those biases at the back of our heads, accepting that it is somewhere there, right? The way we see women, the way we saw our mothers, the way we see our sisters, the way we see our colleagues who are women, right? It is there. That's one. Number two is then being able to deliberately and consciously bring ourselves back to say, it is not a yes, but question. It is a yes and. Being able to see every human as being on the same pedestal. And I know this will trigger a lot of men. To get a lot of men on the edge. When you ask any corporate person to say, do we have more problematic female bosses than male bosses? The immediate response would be, female bosses are more problematic. But the problem is, our data is quite wrong because fundamentally speaking, we have more male bosses overall. So all of the toxicity we see in the corporate world, it cannot be stemming from the microscopic few who are just women trying to hold their grounds, right? So I think what we need to do is to consciously, as a people, most importantly as men, to always bring ourselves back to a point of saying, is this out of bias or is this the reality? In our conversation, in our language, in our engagement, even in marriages. And I'll give you a practical example. If you go to a church today and say, men, I pray for you today, your wife will be richer than you. So if I pray that prayer for you, I'm sure you say, God forbid. In your head, you're like, well, I love my wife. I want my wife to be rich, but not richer than me. But if I sit you and your a friend you've had for 15 years, and I say, Saifem, this your friend go blow pass you. In your head, you are like, if my friend blow, now me still blow. It is still friendship. So we don't see, even men who are married don't see their wives as partners. They see them as a subject to say, if my wife has this kind of money, that means, in quotes, she would start misbehaving. Meanwhile, men misbehave every now and again, right? So I think it's a conscious thing a lot of men need to bring to the fore of their minds. Every now and again, there's a platform we have at Boys Scholars called Sabi Platform, where it's an intelligent test men can take. About 15 questions, pim, I can show you your biases to say, see, you have a problem, you can kill your wife. Because the way you are behaving, if you expect to be, eating freshly made food in 21st century, it is not about the food, it's about your mind. Because you're not thinking about the other human being who's trying to sort that out. We'd ask questions like, can you stay with your wife in the labor room? I hope you know some men cannot stand it. And they impregnated the woman. Right? Some men cannot stand when their wife is going through their monthly, whatever. Right? And say, okay, why is all this nonsense happening here? Why is all this nonsense happening here? Right? And these are the realities of a lot of women. So I think it's something men must continuously, and the truth is, we're going to struggle with this till we take our last breath as men, till we all die. You see it with pastors' wives, imam's wife, MD, in the corporate world. You see it everywhere. If a woman becomes the MD today in any institution, you can see the fury in the faces of men, those subtle. You can see the unexpressing subordination. You can see the pent-up anger, right? This anger may be expressed in just putting more work so that they can promote you. These are biases that we must try to fix. And it's not even about you having a girl child or having a daughter or having a sister. It is something we must fix for humanity's sake. Because whether we like it or not, these women are endangered species. There are a lot of, young men out there that we must pray that they must not meet our girls because they are walking, talking time bomb, right? They are just there because of some of those biases. So for you, because you're learned, you're exposed, you have some experience around this kind of things, it is easier for you to manage. But think about these men who are not educated, who have never been into the four walls of any room, who have never been a part of this kind of conversation. So it's a continuous struggle for those of us who understand these things. Even for me, I do stuff for boys and men. I've had issues in my relationship, right? Just from my own bias of no, you shouldn't be talking to me that way now. No, I shouldn't be addressed that way. And I tell you, I say this from every sense of responsibility. I'm sure my baby is going to see this podcast. And, at some points, I needed to start coming back to say, maybe this girl is not the issue in the first place. Maybe it is me, my biases, my the thoughts I've always had in my head about the way women should behave, the way women should act, my expectation. Maybe I'm expecting her to behave or respect me the way my mother respected my dad, or the things I've seen in a movie, or the way I've seen women portrayed in the society, right?
Yeah.
And every young man can understand this.
We play with some of these things. I play all this nonsense play with my wife from time to time where I'm like, is this how your grandmother used to
Correct.
I do with your grandfather? I don't even have sometimes I don't even have the mind to say, is this how your mother used to do with your father? Because again, the generations have changed, and you have to go back 2 generations back and say, did your grandmother not used to kneel down to give your grandfather? So, soft men. Soft men. So on my left hand, soft men. On the right hand, healthy masculinity. Isn't there some concern that, isn't there some justification to some concern that the rise of soft men may be negatively impacting what should be healthy masculinity? Where do we draw the line? Where do we go from one extreme to another? I do not know, because this thing about, look, as we're having this conversation, there are people who will view this podcast and probably say 2 weak men, 2 maybe weak or soft men, trying to make every other man weak or soft. People will read things differently, right? Personally, I don't really care what people think or say, because nobody knows you better than you and your God who made you. But is there a case there that sometimes there is a confusion with regard to what healthy masculinity is? Some think that being healthy masculine mean you must be I don't know, you have to be very vulnerable. Correct. You have to be like, tell me what your thoughts are.
This is a very tricky one, and I'll be very, very honest with you, because we host the largest boys summits, arguably across Africa, where we about 20,000 boys across different parts of the continent. And I recall in May, I posted one of our guests, and some guy it was almost like the guy was crashing out. Like, the theme of the event was redefining masculinity, boys to also men. And he kept saying, masculinity shouldn't be redefined. Masculinity is masculinity. You guys are just soft. And when you said that soft man word sentence, it's sort of just, I won't call it a trigger. I was going to respond to the guy to say, bro, do you know the amount of work I've been doing to blah, blah, blah? We're trying to... Again, I also get where it's coming from, because people mistake vulnerability with a masculinity men, right? So you say, as a man, be vulnerable. So, for example, I tell a lot of men, boys don't need your strength. They need your vulnerability. They don't need you to come and tell them stories of how you made 5 billion. They need to hear from you how you made that mistake of sleeping with your secretary and how you were still able to fix your marriage despite those issues. This is vulnerability. And life is naturally tough. Every human being requires grit. For men, you require double of that grit because of, in quote, societal expectation. So there is a need to be clear that vulnerability isn't softness. Vulnerability isn't shying away from responsibility. Vulnerability isn't being able to face the consequences of your actions. And I'll give practical example based on my experience, right? So there's this guy, I'd mentioned I run Guyversation, just a small space for men to have discussion and just open up and share their thoughts and all of that. And this guy said he lost his job 3 months prior, and every day he leaves the house, drives, he was staying around Dogba, drives, goes to Aguda, goes to Ikeja, and all of, not like he was searching for a job, just because he wanted to leave the house so the wife don't see him as an irresponsible man. He said, number one, he couldn't face his wife, tell his wife he lost his job because he felt it would be seen as a failure. Number two, he had responsibilities and all of that. He needed to make up some sort of activity that even if eventually I now tell my wife, oh, I lost my job 3 months ago, but I've been, doing, the way men say these things, I've been fixing 1 or 2 things. And I told the guy, I said, I get where you're coming from. I see where you're coming from. You don't want to disappoint your wife. You don't want to be seen a certain way. But what you're doing is not responsibility. Is you shying away from responsibility. Because what responsibility means is that, babe, they fired me. I don't know what the next phase is. I know it's going to be tough for us with our finance. We need to sit down. Let's have a conversation. I have 50 million naira loan from this bank. Our mortgage is still out, about 30 million. We may need to withdraw our kids from this school in Lekki to a school in whatever and all of that. Let's sit down and have this conversation. The problem with soft men is not that they don't want to be seen. It's not like they don't want to express themselves, but they don't want to be seen as a man. And I will explain. So this kind of man, he didn't want to be seen as a failure. Sir, if you agree with me, we've all failed in different parts of our lives.
True.
Right? But vulnerability is saying, this is who I am. I've messed up in these areas, but I'm picking myself up. However, a soft man does not ever want to say, I've messed up in this area. I want to just keep patching it. And guess what? It is those men who are soft who outwardly behave like the strongest of all, because they are trying to match up and make up all of their inadequacies with external activities, right? So I would say it is important. In fact, there's a book I'm going to write before the end of the year for men below the age of 30 rather. And the title of the book is Be Vulnerable. Because the truth is, we need more men who can open up. I sit with a 50-year-old man. I'm 33 and I'm saying, so sir, tell me about your life. And he's telling me, oh, when I bought my first oil well, Naira was just one. Sir, I don't bloody care about that. I only need to be a startup founder and raise one seed fund. I will make the same money you made 30 years ago. Tell me the things I need to know that would help my life. Tell me your gaps. Tell me the places where you fell. People don't want to tell stories about their vulnerability anymore, especially men. And this is a challenge for people like you, sir, who are older than we are. We don't need your strength. We need your vulnerability. We need men who can tell us, see, I cheated on my wife. My 35-year-old married that is working. It is not working because it's smooth. And people like us then have the wrong assumptions about life, about masculinity, about marriage, about being a father, because the stories and the pictures you show us It's a different thing entirely. You have a 20-year-old son. If you sit me down about your marriage, I don't know how long it is. If I tell you, Mr. Femi, tell me about your marriage, you tell me, as a man, you need to sacrifice a lot. No, I'm not needing that from you, sir. Tell me the dirty things. Tell me the things that would help me help my marriage. Tell me the things that would help me not make some mistakes. Tell me how you used to shout at your wife. I mean, there are pastors who beat their wives every Sunday morning and they come to church to pray. And when they have marriage seminars, all they say is, as a man, you must love your wife. As a woman, you must be humble. Right? So I would say it's a war cry for vulnerability. For soft men, it is just trying to mask your inadequacies. At the end of the day, when everybody's buried, we'll be buried face up. Nobody will bury face down. Right? So whether you're vulnerable now, all of us at the end of the day will still be vulnerable. So I mean, I hope you know the alpha male and the masculine gigantos will not drag me on this.
Well, probably, but again, some things need to be said.
Yeah.
I mean, to your point about my marriages and failure, you know, nobody said marriages were going to be perfect. I mean, didn't Paul say, "He who marries does well"?
Correct.
I mean, but he who does not marry does better.
Yeah.
Didn't he say, "He who marries will have tribulation in the flesh"? So it's a problem, and you're right. Some of us, we saw our parents struggle.
Yeah.
And we told ourselves we won't repeat the same things. Some of us have even gone ahead and done things more stupid than our dads did.
Correct.
And we fall many times, many times. Because we've got to wrap this up now. Feminism. Some people say the conversation around women and feminism is just too lopsided, too much, that it just upends the apple cart. I don't know what your thoughts are in terms of feminism. Are we over engaging in conversation around women and feminism to the detriment of men, or what exactly is going on there?
I'm a feminist. And I say this with all sense of responsibility. The work I do with boys is for a selfish reason for the masculine tribe. Women have been abused for so long, pushed behind, debased, done all sorts to them. You don't beat somebody and still tell them how to cry. The age-long bias against women and girls. If women come out every day to scream, stop, it is worth it and deserving of it. I know the problem I find is a lot of women attack me to say I'm trying to raise an anti-feminism movement. And I just smile at their, bold ignorance. Because what I'm trying to do is to raise men who can see feminism for what it is. Right? I don't think it is lopsided. I just feel like people have their different way of expressing their trauma. So a woman who has been raped twice, if she comes on social media to say, I'm a feminist, you don't expect that kind of woman to be careful with her choice of words, to be careful with her expression. So we shouldn't tell people how to express what their pain is. It is their personal pain. But from a general outlook, I have a problem with men who have a problem with women doing a rallying call for things pertaining to women. So I hear a lot of men say, oh, why is this feminism noise? Can men too go and make some noise about raising better boys? I hope you know, sir. 97% of our volunteers at boys' quarters, they are women. More women are more invested in raising better men than men. More women, and I say this with my full chest. If you call men now to say, come and volunteer, to go and, talk to boys in secondary schools, they are either busy doing all sorts or trying to find a feminist who is trying to make noise on social media. So the thing is, it is this men that should keep quiet. So I don't think there is a loose-sided conversation about feminism. I think we need to even intensify this conversation. I'll bet, I need to be clear, there are those who abuse these things. Anything can be abused. I mean, we've been in this country where, some lady are told a member to go and sell their property and give their property out and all of that. That kind of person is a Christian for all we care. So people do all sorts. So anything can be abused. Feminism can be abused. Christianity can be abused. Podcasts can be abused, right? So I don't think it's a feminism thing. And I think my final thought about this is, I think we have a lot of entitled men in our generation. Men who point fingers at the other gender for their own problems and also point fingers at the other gender for the other gender's problem. So this feminism issue, in fact, I need women to stand on the neck of men, right? For them to know. And the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life is a man, I'm going to try to get the tweet and send to Mano, is a man dragging a woman that, why are you people not paying attention to boys? And I'm wondering, are there loose boats in your heads? Why are you attacking a woman for not raising better boys and you're a man with a ball in between your legs? Right? So, to be very honest with you, pro-feminism, in fact, sometimes we need sprinkling of toxicity for men to understand that, you see, the next generation, if men are not careful, I don't want to be a prophet of doom. We'll start getting grants in Africa. The way we get grants now for girls, we'll start getting grants in Africa for us to raise boys and men. Because there will be men who just be men by their private parts. But in all sense of things, you will not be able to call them women again.
There are people who say men who have a mindset similar to yours are simps. Are you a simp?
Oh God, it's not meant. They say it to me every now and again, so maybe I'm used to that. Well, I'm not. I'm a man of men. In the last 7 years, I've spoken to over 20,000 boys directly. Right. I'm what a lot of men want to do, but they are scared of doing it. So I mean, that I hear every now and again. So I'm sure after this podcast, a lot of them will come to my page to check if this guy, you are trying to, you want girls to like you. I'm in a relationship, so I'm not searching for one. So, and I'm enjoying it. In fact, I'm going to be getting married very soon, so maybe it sorts this conversation out.
There's this video I saw recently. I don't know whether you've seen that video of this lady was saying, talking to single ladies, or if you don't live with your husband, if you are a single mom, once your kids start getting to a certain age, like 11 or something, ship them out to their dads. Let men teach boys to be men. And she was making a strong argument that usually girls, the women, mothers try to raise the boys to be men. And look at what the data says. Look at America. Look at most of the crimes being perpetuated now are young men who were young boys raised by single moms and all of that. And even if the dad is not in your life or you are not in the dad's life, let him go and spend some time out with a dad. There's this belief that a man, even the worst kind of men, a man would not lie to his son, men
will lie to their sons.
Well, we see that a lot. But what do you say to that?
First of all, I believe a single mother can raise a son, a good son. There is no cast in stone.
Would they all bring him a balance though?
the balance is, I don't think it should be a case of when your son is 11, ship the son to that irresponsible man. There are a lot of men. What you need to do is to expose that boy to positive role models and mentors around you. A lot of them. I think it's a wrong assumption to think an irresponsible husband would raise a great son. It's an assumption. It is possible. I don't know. But I think it's a very grievous assumption. So I'm not going to advise that.
But then aren't you making an assumption that the reason why that marriage is not fully consummated, the reason why the woman is a single mother is because the man is irresponsible? Sometimes that's not necessarily the case. Maybe it's a relationship that was consummated too early.
True.
And then a child happened, and then they just are not compatible, and they never probably got married. Things do happen. And sometimes you have a very decent man who wants to be there.
Absolutely.
He cannot be.
I mean, I totally agree with you. So because our conversation today is about boys and men, there are a lot of terrible women out there. There are more toxic, a lot of toxic women out there. But the point is, I'm trying to help single mothers to say, don't just feel you're obligated. If what broke your marriage is a major character, attitudinal, long-standing issues that you have tried addressing, you've tried getting help for, it is not healthy for your son to be dumped in that kind of environment. Because what you're trying to say is, I want my son, my husband or my ex-husband replicated in my son, if that is what you want. And the truth is, I know that humans know the truth. If your husband is a good man and you know that you were just problematic, let the man, support the guy, right? I said it earlier. I said, I don't believe a woman can single-handedly, raise a boy. When I say single-handedly, I don't mean, being in the house and all of that. So if you're a Christian, for example, and you're a single mother, let your son spend some time with your pastor. There are big uncles in your church who are bank executive. Let them go for boot camps. Expose them to masculinity. Not from a point of your incapability of being able to raise a child. You can raise a great child. But there are some things a man will tell a boy that a woman would not. And that's where the exposure should be, right? But I'm saying this, I went for a TV interview, and one of the interviewers, a very popular name, I think she even used to work in this building, told me, see, I'm a single mother, my son is struggling, blah, 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 and all of that. I knew she didn't want to mention her husband's name. And I told her, I said, look for men around you. And Mr. Femi, this is a call for men. This is a call for responsible men like you to rise up to the task of helping the community. You have a great son. Your son is amazing. There are a lot. For example, I was telling my friend yesterday, I said, this Lekki Expressway is the new Oshodi Underbridge. The amount of young boys on that road now, give it another 12 months. We will need to do an Okoya to come and help us on this road. So we need men to rise up. So if there's a single mother around you, please offer the help, offer the support, right? It should not be a I'm going to say it again. It shouldn't be a cast in stone rule. Your husband cheated, over and over again. The relationship broke. He was abusing you and all of that. And because your son turned the level, you want to send your son down there. Don't ever make that mistake, right? Get people who can help. It could be your cousin. It could be your uncle. It could be,
I kind of agree with you. I mean, I just unpacked a fundamental thing that you just said. A good man will not abandon the upbringing of his child to his mother alone.
Yes,
he will make an effort to be in his life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Unless,
can I quickly mention, and I want to say this carefully, we're all work in progress. As humans, we need to offer ourselves grace. So our definition of good men and good women, we need to sit again and redefine it. Because you made a mistake doesn't mean you are bad or terrible. So there are some, I'm not married. I speak to a lot of married men. a bulk of my friends are married, way years ahead of me. And I see that as humans, we need to offer ourselves a lot of grace. So our definition of good man, there's a need for us to relook that definition and see how we can offer each other a lot of grace.
One final thought that Emmanuel compels me to answer or to ask you. Cross-dressing. It's a whole lot of cross-dressers. It used to be pretty foreign. It's becoming more mainstream. So, I mean, what's your thought about how does it impact the next generation?
Funny enough, I run like a startup school, and when I teach startup founders, there are two people I use as an example when it comes to grit and audacity. I use Bobrisky and Portable. Their audacity is crazy. You need to be in their heads for you to build something in Africa. You need to behave that way. But I think it's a fundamental identity problem. Let's take fashion aside. For men who, and there are a couple of them who has gone mainstream. Our job for people like us is to build a Chinese wall around our boys. I don't think your personal truth should be democratized for a generation. I think there's a fundamental problem with identity. So stop confusing the angel. If you want to be a guy, be a guy. If Thunder wants to strike, let him strike at a certain gender, right? So I think there's a fundamental problem with I didn't say Bobrisky. With people like that, right? Because they are struggling to accept being a man, and they are earnestly wishing to be a woman. And they are in between. And the problem is women are not even accepting you. And we men are saying you are not for us. So you're just in between. And it's a fundamental psychological problem. And for Africa, it is going to get much and much democratized in the coming days. We're going to say, we say a couple of them already. You go to schools these days and talk to boys who's your role model. The kind of names they mention, you would then know that these guys are going mainstream. So I think there's a fundamental identity issue that needs to be managed. That needs to be, people like Bobrisky need help. No doubt. Great guy, I like the guy's audacity. If the guy is a startup founder for a beauty tech company, we can help him create a solid go-to-market strategy and use the same audacity, the same passion, the same energy, the same I don't care, the same resilience, the same grit. But this guy is using the same thing to find himself. And see, it is when there is an emptiness within, you would use everything outside as a mask. So you try to dress this way, you make up, fix your nail. There is nothing you can do as a man. Let me say this, sir. My counsel to men, no matter what happens to you in life, don't do three things. Number one, don't kill yourself. Number two, don't die young. Number three, don't change your gender. You see, those three things, if you can help yourself, don't kill yourself because there's still hope. If you can do it, don't die young. Look after yourself. No matter what happens to you in this life as a man, don't change your gender. Remain as a man. Let's struggle this struggle together. Let's fight this together. So those guys, there's an identity problem. There's an emptiness problem they need to fill up some way, somehow. And it's just an expression of their struggle. They are going to say several things. Oh, it's fashion, it's hotel, it's a major, major identity problem. It's a thing of the mind, right? And because this is quite sensitive, we're not beginning to hear cases of full-blown homosexuality amongst young boys because of the picture they are seeing. The way I'm speaking passionately, honestly, with the amount I earn in the banking industry, there's no reason why I should be wasting my time. What's my business with boys? But people like me will not sound interesting to these young boys because I'm not twerking on Twitter, on TikTok rather. I'm not doing all sorts on Snapchat. But it is this cross-dressers, this in quotes negative model for our boys, because what they want to do is that we're going to have boys grow up to become women. And it's not a problem. with them becoming whatever they want to become. But we need boys that can grow up to become men. And that's not the picture of men. That is not the kind of men that will lead a family, that will lead a nation. We need men who can stand out, who can be differentiated with the way they dress, the way they talk. And so I'm not talking about men who have effeminate personality. There are men like that. It is your natural, but I'm talking about men who deliberately say, see, I'm a man, but I want to change my gender. I want to start wearing skirt. I want to start, I love them. I pray for them, but I have a problem with them.
My last question is completely outside the box. Where will you raise your son? In Nigeria and overseas? And why?
I'll be very truthful with you, right? Very, very honest.
Weigh your words carefully.
I'll be very honest with you. The woman I want to get married to will not allow us to raise our son in Nigeria. So I'll say outside of the country. And beyond her, for me personally, I lost my mom to the uselessness of our health sector. I don't ever want any of my family member to go through that anymore. For example, I've seen some of my friends take delivery of their babies outside of the country, and I see there are crises sometimes where I see the seamlessness. That's one. Number two is, I believe, my personal postulation, and people shouldn't take my word for it, the deliverance of Africa as a continent, there has to be a wiping away of a generation. Those who will rescue this continent will come from abroad. They will return. They will someday wake up like the Daniels in Babylon and say, we are going back to our father's land to rescue our nation. And guess what? These kids would have the right education, exposure, well-traveled, and extremely wealthy. So you will not be able to buy them with a bag of rice or a bottle of tomato, right? So I believe that our sons, for people like us, are the guys who are going to truly transform Africa. It will take a lot of efforts and there are a lot of people raising their children here, no doubt, to raise them here and not carry the Nigeria thing. Not because of anything, just to raise a child in an enabling environment, an environment where they know that you can dream and your dream can come through without knowing any uncle who is a government official, where you can be a son of a nobody and become somebody just by hard work, where they understand what it means to queue, what it means to pay, what it means to go for driving tests before you get a driver's license. It's hard, but...
So you are the Jackpot community, long and short.
But I'm speaking with you from Victoria Island, Lagos.
Yeah, but when your kids come, Ita.
Maybe before they go.
It's interesting you mentioned Daniel. Would you be disappointed if I told you Daniel did not return with the Israelites to Jerusalem? He stayed in Babylon?
I won't be disappointed because some of them will stay in Babylon. Some of them will become Babylonians, because some of them will be citizens. So
he did the work. He discovered, he mapped the prophecy that they would return, and he got them ready to go, but he didn't go back. I don't know whether that history will repeat itself, and that the people who will solve Nigeria's problems will be the people who come from abroad. I really think none of them. The people here, neither the people here nor the people abroad, can solve Nigeria's problem. As to who can solve Nigeria's problems, well, I think it's God that can solve Nigeria's problems. Yeah. God and only God.
We'll keep praying.
But what a healthy conversation you and I have had. I've totally enjoyed it. totally enjoyed it. I expect the dragging. I will drag you on social media, but you'll be fine. They are going to drag me too, but
they've always been dragging you.
Yeah.
In fact, I saw a particular clip someone sent to me where you interviewed some lady, and the person was dragging you, not even the lady. Say, this Femi guy, I respect this Femi guy. Why is it, So I was invited, not like I came out of my own volition. I was invited.
Well, it's okay. I mean, so sometimes it helps for us to just have these conversations and think outside the box, because whatever you think it is that you think you know, or that you think is a reality, somebody else thinks something else.
Agree.
And getting closure and finding a way starts with the conversations.
Yeah.
If you don't have the conversations, you're just an intellectual illiterate.
Yeah.
If you don't have conversations, if you believe one thing and I believe another, somewhere we could both be wrong, but one of us could be right. And the answer could be somewhere else.
Yeah.
But we begin to move towards finding the answers by having the conversations. If we don't have conversations, just
Clearly.
what, I don't know what to say, but I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, man. And I do hope we'll have a part 2 of this.
Depending
Solomon.
on how much I've been dragged to come.
Yeah, sometimes they drag you enough, you come back and
I'll
drag
come
them
back
back.
to clarify.
Solomon Oluwatobi Ayodele.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Well
much.
done.
Thank you so
Well
much.
done.
Thank you.